Broadcasting live from the mountains of Montana, get ready for an hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. Liberals beware, because this is the Wise Conservative Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. Now, this week is a little special. If you didn't know, so the GOP and President Trump himself, they did this thing where they just came out with their own fake news awards. And so that actually just came out not too long ago, within the past hour. And the site immediately was crashing because so many people were flooding to it. So I'm actually going to talk about that in this show, along with other current events. Of course, there's a lot going on in our nation. And, well, there's a lot to talk about, folks. I'm going to get to the fake news awards after a couple more stories on fake news. I felt like it was fitting to get some more fake news in. There's always so much, and you can't ever possibly cover it all because it seems like every other story or every story on some channels is just lying about our president. But I picked a couple, and I'm going to cover them for you guys. Starting off with this, and well, this isn't exactly the news that's fake, but it is a senator that's making some reaches here. So I've talked about Senator Jeff Flake before on our show. He's an Arizona Republican, and he actually just announced, I think it was within the past month or so, that he's not going to run for re-election in the next cycle. Well, anyway, Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake, he's now coming under fire for an attack on President Trump that happened just today. And he actually accused our president of using Stalinist language and promoting global instability with his criticism of the media. Now, someone actually responded here. This was the RNC chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel. She tweeted out responding to Senator Jeff Flake saying, quote, "Senator Flake, turn on the news. It's wall-to-wall with biased coverage against POTUS. He has every right to push back. Comparing the leader of the free world to murderous dictators is absurd. You've gone too far." Now, Flake took to the Senate floor just this morning to take aim at President Trump's plan to award the fake news awards, which are going to come up later in the show, to members of the media who he claimed were, quote, biased and corrupt. Flake is, of course, a longtime Trump opponent and has slammed Trump for calling the press the, quote, enemy of the people, a phrase which he said was used by mass-murdering Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. Quote, "It is a testament to the condition of our democracy that our own president uses words infamously spoken by Joseph Stalin to describe his enemies." Flake's speech, replete with dramatic flourishes, hinted at a dark future for America, and it even warned, quote, "If we compromise the truth for the sake of our politics, we are lost." And in this speech, he frequently implied that our president, who he actually accused of harboring, quote, pernicious fantasies about rigged elections and voter fraud, was acting as a kind of despot and would attack the press. He continually said that the press hasn't made any false allegations and that the press is the guardian of democracy, and that, quote, "when a figure in power reflexively calls any press that doesn't suit him fake news, it is that person who should be the figure of suspicion and not the press." He also said that our president is fueling authoritarians in other countries, in places such as Syria and even the Philippines. Quote, "Not only has the past year seen a president borrow despotic language to refer to the free press, but it seems that he has now in turn inspired authoritarians and dictators with his own language." Wow, so he really dug in and attacked our president quite a bit. So, of course, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders would shoot back at him. She's always on top of all of these insults that people continually throw at our president. So at today's daily press briefing, she said that Flake had recently visited Cuba, where he had nice things to say about the authoritarian government in that country. Quote, "It is a testament to the condition of our democracy when our president uses infamously spoken words." She continually repeated that and debunked it. She then went on to say, quote, "I found it quite interesting that he is coming out to attack the president, considering he's the one who was recently defending an actually oppressive regime. He went to Cuba a few weeks ago and served as a mouthpiece for the oppressive Cuban government." She also blamed Flake's low poll numbers for his attacks on Trump. Of course, it was actually October, pardon me from earlier, guys, but Flake announced in October that he's not seeking re-election just this year in the election. Quote, "He's not criticizing the president because he's against oppression. He's criticizing the president because he has terrible poll numbers and he is looking for some attention." Flake was given some support in his remarks by fellow Arizona Senator John McCain, who in an editorial in the Washington Post also argued the president to stop attacking the press. Quote, "Whether Trump knows it or not, these efforts are being closely watched by foreign leaders who are already using his words as cover as they silence and shutter one of the key pillars of democracy." Now, that was from the actual editorial that McCain wrote. Folks, Jeff Flake, I don't know if you remember this. It was a few episodes back. It was last year, but a few episodes back. I did an episode where I looked at all of the people in the Republican Party within the House of Representatives and the Senate who had the lowest Liberty score. Of course, Jeff Flake was one of the top Republicans to be a rhino, to have a low Liberty score. I believe it was around 20% for his Liberty score, which is absurdly low compared to other Republicans and compared to what it should be. Jeff Flake has never actually supported conservative ideals and never actually supported anyone within our party besides for rhino establishment, senators and representatives. Jeff Flake has never shown any interest in becoming or in actually following conservative ideals, and Jeff Flake has never actually tried to represent the Republican Party. And furthermore, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, had it right when she said that this is exactly why Jeff Flake is polling so low. Because the people do know that there is extreme bias within the news. The people do know that the news has blatantly lied time after time on a multitude of different issues. And furthermore, the people know that the press isn't rooting for our president, isn't even just reporting facts on our president, but that the press is blatantly against our president. People know that on the conservative side and even on the liberal side. But here comes Jeff Flake saying that no, our current state of the media, our current news channels are reporting facts and facts alone. He's coming out here saying that it is Trump who is being a danger to our democracy, that it is Trump who's being a dictator, that it's Trump who is being comparable to Stalin. Folks, no one in America, especially on the conservative side, is as radical and as authoritarian as Joseph Stalin. And furthermore, just because President Trump calls out the press when they lie does not make him a dictator. It does not ruin our democracy. Because, yeah, the media is a very important part to a democracy. The media is a very important part to any form of government where people vote. But it's not important, it's not going to help our democracy when it's not reporting the truth, when it's not reporting facts. When this fake news goes off and says all these random, absurd comments that have no source, that have no backing up, that don't have any factual evidence, that's not helping a democracy, that's undermining it. that's using their role within a democracy to their own advantage to try to convince people of something that isn't true. That's not helping our democracy, folks. That's not what the news is supposed to be about. They're supposed to be helping us. They're supposed to be informing us, not giving us biased info, not giving us their agenda. That's not going to help us decide on who to vote for, folks. That's not going to help us on who we think is actually telling the truth, because they're not going to report anything that is factual. Jeff Flake has made a huge mistake here by attacking our president on this issue. And he was already on the outs within the Republican Party, luckily. But this is going to push him even farther, and he's going to pull even lower. And he's just going to be like Mitt Romney and the Bushes after he's out of office. He's going to be a nobody that no one cares about, but I guarantee he's going to still try to be in the spotlight. Because that seems like the kind of person that he is. That's one of the reasons why he did this as well. To be in the spotlight. He's going to try to continue to comment, and he's going to be loved by the liberal media once he gets out of office and is commenting on every issue. But he's not going to help our nation, folks. He already isn't helping our nation. He's just as bad as John McCain when it comes to this. Luckily, both of them aren't going to run for re-election, and we're going to have 2 new senators from Arizona. But keeping along the lines of fake news, so President Trump had the White House physician, Ronny Jackson, observe him, examine him, and basically see whether he was healthy, which is very important. We don't want the President of the United States to be unhealthy, obviously. Well, CNN chief medical correspondent Sanjay Gupta was ridiculed on actually by both sides of the aisle, just today, for declaring that President Trump has heart disease. Now, yesterday, White House physician Ronny Jackson said that Trump was in excellent health after conducting the president's physical exam. Jackson answered a variety of questions from, of course, the reporters who were very skeptical during a press briefing, and he repeatedly stated that Trump was perfectly fine. But this morning, Gupta, who did not even examine President Trump, took Jackson's data and declared that President Trump has heart disease. And of course, this is prompting instant ridicule from people on both sides of the political aisle. Gupta said, quote, "This is math. This is based on the numbers that Dr. Jackson provided. The president has heart disease." Press Secretary Sarah Sanders reminded everyone during today's press briefing, along with calling out Jeff Flake, that Jackson is the only doctor who has actually examined the president, calling him, quote, "the only credible source when it comes to Donald Trump's health." Gupta eventually followed up his on-air report by doubling down with an article on CNN's website. Quote, "Like most men of his age, President Donald Trump has a common form of heart disease, relatively easy to address if he increases the dose of his cholesterol-lowering medication and makes necessary lifestyle changes." Well, he's not getting any love from anyone, really. The Huffington Post editor-in-chief Lydia Polgreen, whose site even refused to cover Trump in the political section for the early stages of his campaign, wrote, quote, "I'm not a doctor, but this even seems like a stretch." Town Hall political editor Guy Benson said, quote, "The respected doctor who actually examined Trump says otherwise. This seems reckless and unethical." And the Free Beacon reporter Alex Griswold asked, quote, "What else did former Hillary Clinton advisor Sanjay Gupta say?" Another user wrote, quote, "Sanjay Gupta makes a last-minute submission for the Fake News Awards." Meanwhile, CNN senior media correspondent Brian Stelter actually defended Gupta on Twitter, saying the diagnosis contained, quote, "nothing mysterious." Guys, This guy is crazy, and even according to CNN, he's out of line. Now, of course, there's some people in CNN that are going to support him. Of course, they're just so blind from reality that they're going to. But I mean, Sanjay Gupta, he was actually on the campaign for Hillary Clinton. And he's not a cardiologist, first off. He's never examined the president. He's not the White House physician. And he's been spreading these debunked heart rumors since 2016 of our president. Ever since he began running for president, this guy has been saying that he has heart disease. And he hasn't once examined the president. See, this is another one of those tactics from these crazy people on the left, the alt-left, I'll call them, where they try to make an issue out of nothing. Where they try to say that President Trump, this is another way of them trying to say that President Trump isn't fit to be president because he's unhealthy, because he has heart disease, apparently. Folks, our president doesn't have heart disease. He's perfectly healthy. He's going to live a long time. But people at CNN want to make this an issue, and they want to make it a little more questionable whether our president is in good health. Folks, our president is in perfect health, and this is just more fake news. I really love that tweet that someone put out saying that this was a last-minute submission for the fake news awards, because that's perfectly what it was. And that's honestly... Well, I mean, there's just been so many fake news articles and stories on the news within this past year and the year before. It's kind of just crazy that it continues. But I mean, it's going to continue because the left is so delusional within the media. All right, when we come back, the fake news awards. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show. Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. With universal health care, which is essentially the next step beyond Obamacare, this is where Democrats want to take the country. This is where the left wants us to go. With universal health care, now there's no insurance companies, no one competing whatsoever, and the government controls it all.
Calling all young conservatives. Have you ever wanted to write for an online publication? What about host your own conservative radio program? Now you can, thanks to YouthRevolt.org. Youth Revolt is a conservative media network for young people, the goal of which is to educate our fellow Americans, and also to expose the left-wing indoctrination that goes on in classrooms across the country. Become part of a team that is dedicated to taking the country back, one radio program or opinion column at a time. If you're interested, go to YouthRevolt.org and click on Join Us on the top of the page. Fill out our brief questionnaire, and one of our representatives will be in touch with you in no time at all. The time to reclaim our future is now. Be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and join the movement today. Youth Revolt. Speak without fear. My friends, I'm going to be blunt with you. There are a lot of frauds out there today. People who claim to be conservatives and yet, in one way or another, believe that more government is the solution to our problems. That's not what conservatism is about, and even more than that, that's not what our Constitution is about. I'm Jason Veely, a recent college grad who has the guts to say what needs to be said without pulling any punches. On my radio show, you can expect 100% pure conservatism every single weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Join me as we discuss history, liberty, and conservative philosophy in a style that is just as entertaining as it is educational. Who says we can't have fun tearing down the liberal establishment? Tune in to the Jason Veely program live every weeknight at 7 o'clock on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
America is known for its expansive wilderness for all to explore, and for many, that exploration is an important hobby. This exploration is why The Survivalist was created. On this blog, you will find expansive information on all things wilderness, from what knife you should carry to what backpack gives you the best bang for your buck. This group of 4 writers has created a very diversified and useful site, which I personally recommend. The site has given me much knowledge on a variety of topics, and I urge you to check it out at the-survivalist.weebly.com. Once again, that is the-survivalist.weebly.com.
I was assuming that it meant coverage, but if he says that there's a small group of people who understood what it was, so I'm like, what is it? What is confetti?
It gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone else around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
He paid $38 million, looks like $38 million in taxes.
Are you tired of listening to the snowflake liberal media report about ice cream scoops and typos instead of real facts? What the Wise Conservative Show, we promise you that we will not report about Kofifi, but instead about the truth. Instead, about the facts about what's going on in our nation. Join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Wise Conservative Show for your dose of unapologetic conservative talk radio. The Wise Conservative Show, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. And folks, I have been waiting for this segment, and I've been waiting for this to actually come out itself. The Fake News Awards are here, folks. And, well, honestly, I think that this list is pretty good. Of course, there's some other stuff that could have been added to it, but there's just so much that happened that was fake news within this past year that it's hard to get all of them on it. So this list that they compiled, and it's actually on the official GOP website, I agree with it. So the website, as I said before, actually crashed right when Donald Trump tweeted out about it. He tweeted out with the link saying that the Fake News Awards were out, that they were up, that they were here, and within a minute, the website had crashed. So, and I had actually, I was trying to look at it probably 20, 30 minutes after it actually came out, and the website was still down. It wasn't until about, well, now like 40 minutes ago that I actually was able to get onto the website to get the list for you guys and to look at it myself. So the website link in Trump's tweet was originally down, of course. But then he also tweeted out, quote, "Despite some very corrupt and dishonest media coverage, there are many great reporters I respect and lots of good news for the American people to be proud of." And that's actually right. There are some stories that are definitely true, that are factual, but they're just overwhelmed in today's atmosphere by all of this fake news. So are you guys ready? Are you ready to actually hear this list? All right, I'm going to start at number 11 and work my way down to number 1 so that you get that winner last. So coming in at number 11 in the Fake News Awards, quote, "In Trump's words, Russia collusion." The Russian collusion is perhaps the greatest hoax perpetrated on the American people. There is no collusion. Now, that's a quote that Donald Trump said. I believe it was a tweet. But that's number 11 because the Russia collusion, of course, was the biggest and continues to be the biggest fake news that is being perpetrated by the media. Of course, they believe still that the White House is communicating with Russia to try to rig America to be Russia's puppet. It's a notion that they brought out like about a week after the election. It kind of traveled off because no one really believed it anymore. And then when they ran out of other excuses as to why they lost the election, they came back to it. And it's still here today, folks. So if this is number 11, well, it's kind of amazing that this is only number 11. So let's see what continues with number 10, where it is the New York Times report that the Trump administration had hidden a climate change report. Now, of course, we all know that the Trump administration didn't actually do this, but the New York Times was on it as quickly as possible to try to say that he did. We all know that's not true, though, folks. Moving up to number 9, the CNN report that former FBI Director James Comey would dispute President Trump's claim he was told he was not under investigation. Of course, folks, he was told that he wasn't under investigation. We all know that. And so President Trump didn't think he was. Of course, that in itself was a lie, and he was being investigated from even during the Obama administration before he even won the election. So, of course, that's fake news, and the fact that he wasn't even under investigation, that James Comey said, was fake news in itself. But moving up to number 8, we have Newsweek report that Polish First Lady did not shake Donald Trump's hand when he visited Poland. Folks, did you see videos of President Trump's trip to Poland? Or even just listen to speeches that he gave or anything? For some reason, Poland loves our president. They love President Trump. Every video I saw of him there were so many people cheering, so many people so happy to see him and thanking him and saying that he was such a great person. And folks, he was loved in Poland, and he's loved by most people across the world. It's just the media and the delusional snowflakes within our nation that don't love him, folks. President Trump is actually a very great person and a very strong leader. And many nations are proud to have an actual leader in the White House again. Because for the past 8 years, we didn't have that, folks. The last president was not a true leader. He had no foreign policy. He had no actual solution to any of the problems that he faced. That wasn't a leader, folks. People are happy to see President Trump in the Oval Office across the world. But moving on to number 7, CNN's retracted report claiming Anthony Scaramucci Russia ties. Now, this was one that came out really quickly after he was hired as press secretary. They were saying that Scaramucci was connected to Russia and that he colluded as well, and that he had made dealings with Russia time after time. Of course, this was proven fake, and they retracted the story, but that didn't stop a lot of people from actually seeing it and believing it and not knowing that it was fake. Moving on to number 6, another CNN one. This is the third CNN story in the past 5 or 6 numbers here. But number 6, CNN's video suggesting that President Trump overfed fish during visit with Japanese Prime Minister. Folks, I actually covered this on my show a little bit. Because, I mean, it was really a non-story because it was fake, but what happened was when President Trump visited Japan, if you don't remember, both him and the Japanese Prime Minister fed some koi fish in a pond. And so what happened was the Japanese Prime Minister dumped all of his fish food into it at once. And then President Trump did the same. But CNN got a picture of only President Trump doing it, and then tried to claim that he was being disrespectful towards Japanese culture. It's just more fake news, folks. You can't make this stuff up because it's is so illogical. But speaking of more illogical stuff, let's move on to number 5. The Washington Post David Weigel tweeting that Trump's December rally in Pensacola, Florida was not packed with supporters. And folks, this is that infamous photo. I'm sure you've probably seen it if you've seen too many political pictures online. Of course, there was always this picture where it showed a Donald Trump rally with barely any people because it was zoomed in so closely to President Trump. And then they compared it with a Hillary Clinton rally where, well, it showed that the room was packed, or it showed that the room was so packed that, well, no one could even fit in anymore. But if you actually look at reality, the Clinton rallies were completely empty and most of the room was empty. But the Trump rallies were packed and there were people who didn't even get into every single Trump rally. There were thousands of people who tried to get in but couldn't. There were people who showed up but were just standing because they couldn't find a seat. There were people who couldn't even get to the venue because it was too busy. President Trump's rallies were enormous and they filled entire stadiums. That's pretty crazy, folks. Moving on to number 4, the Time report that President Trump removed a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. Now, this is just a classic case of the liberal media trying to race bait again. They did it countless times in the past, and here's another example of it, trying to say that President Trump was racist because he removed a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. Folks, he didn't remove any bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. This was just Time trying to bait on issues that don't even exist, frankly. Now we're in the top 3, though, folks. Moving on to number 3, the CNN report that the Trump campaign had early access to the hacked documents from WikiLeaks. Now, this is back when WikiLeaks was doing the DNC leaks and the Podesta leaks. And, well, what CNN did was they tried to say that it was Trump who was colluding with Russia who gave the leaks to WikiLeaks. So this kind of ties into number 11 with the Russia collusion. But it's its own thing in itself because they claimed that the Trump campaign had also seen the documents that Russia had stolen from the DNC and from John Podesta himself. Moving on to number 2, ABC News' Brian Ross with his bungled report on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Of course, he got so many facts wrong and really couldn't talk straight in the whole thing. I mean, he kept saying all of these things that were just wrong and that didn't even describe Michael Flynn whatsoever. And folks, it was fake news at its finest. But number 1, the biggest fake news report in the entire year of 2017. The New York Times' Paul Krugman claiming markets would never recover from the Trump presidency. And folks, that is the biggest lie we have seen yet. This is just like what happened with Brexit, folks. The stocks, well, the market kind of dipped down a little bit the day of the election and the day after the election. The same happened with Brexit with the referendum. But then after that, they soared, and President Trump has been reaching records quicker and faster than any president in history. The markets have surged so far, farther than any historic value. He's been able to do this quicker than any other president, folks. The same thing happened after Brexit. Markets surged, markets thrived because of one amazing reason. Business owners know that when there's a conservative in power, or that when conservative ideals are being pursued, that markets are going to benefit, that the people are going to benefit, the taxes are going to be lowered, that businesses aren't going to be bogged down by all these regulations. The consumers are going to win. But the market itself, the free market, will be able to thrive. And that's when the markets surge. That's when all these records are had. Folks, President Trump has led to great things within the stock market and great things within our nation as a whole. And the fake news just can't seem to actually get that right. For some reason, they think that President Trump has ruined the markets and that all that's happening right now is because of President Obama. Folks, it's a common excuse that you hear in the news media and that you hear from the left everywhere in our nation. Every time President Trump does something good or something good happens because of him, they claim it's because of President Obama. But every time something bad happens or the effects of something, which I haven't seen, every time they think that something is bad, they blame it on President Trump. The same thing happened in President Obama's administration. Everything bad that happened, they blamed on Bush. The market crash, everything. The debt, they blamed on Bush. And now they're saying that the surging markets are because of Obama. I don't know why they seem to have a hard time with the concept of time. But right now, President Trump is president. In 2016, President Obama was president. And 8 years before that, it was Bush that was president. Folks, it's not a hard concept. Presidents aren't affecting other things as much as this. Yeah, their previous policies that they put into place are going to have the same effects that they had during that presidency, but all of a sudden they're not going to take effect years after they were implemented. They're not going to suddenly crash a market years after it was implemented. They're not going to suddenly make the market surge years after they were implemented. Furthermore, if you've ever actually looked into economics at all, which I feel like a lot of liberals haven't, a lot of the alt-left hasn't, a lot of the left in general hasn't, or at least they didn't understand it. Because what happens in economics is you speculate, and that's how markets are driven, folks. You have to speculate to see how the future is going to be in order to run your business in present day. Markets are based off of speculation. You're not going to look to the past to try and decide what you're going to do, what stock you're going to buy. That's not what's happening. You're not looking to the past for that. You're looking to the future, trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. You're looking to the Trump administration, not the Obama administration. It's the speculation that drives these markets up and at times brings them down. That's why when President Obama was elected, the markets crashed, folks. Because he was terrible for our economy. That's when President Trump was elected. Markets surged, and they're continuing to surge to this day, creating records upon records, hitting new milestones, putting more money in the pockets of everyday Americans. That's all thanks to President Trump, not President Obama. And the fake news is going to continue to say otherwise. But folks, we all know that that's a lie. We all know that it was President Trump that has done all of this and that has kicked all of these fake news stories out and called them out for what they truly are. Lies. And we all know the fake news is very prevalent in this nation. But folks, that's not going to keep us down. That's not going to keep us silent. Because we know the conservative movement spans across the entire nation and is better for our people. It's better for everyone who lives here. Whether they think it or not, we all know that the free market principles is going to help our nation and help our economy. It's going to get people out of poverty, off of welfare. The fake news doesn't report that, but we all know that it's true. All right, I'm going to take one last commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show. Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. What it means to be a conservative is very simple. It means that you want to protect freedoms and liberties. You want to protect the Constitution and limit the government. It's a very simple definition. It's a very simple cause to follow. And this is what a lot of people do kind of value conservatism as.
Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, the Jason Veely Program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University, or go to prageru.com for all of their latest content. That's Prager, the letter U.com. prageru.com.
Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. With universal health care, which is essentially the next step beyond Obamacare, this is where Democrats want to take the country. This is where the left wants us to go. With universal health care, now there's no insurance companies, no one competing whatsoever, and the government controls it all. Have you ever wanted to stand up to your liberal professor? Have you ever wanted to help expand the conservative movement? Well, it sounds like you would be a perfect fit for Youth Revolt. Youth Revolt is a team of dedicated young conservatives fighting liberal indoctrination within our school system. If you're interested in being a part of this team by being a columnist or even hosting your own radio show, go ahead and click the Join Now tab at the top of youthrevolt.org. You'll be asked to answer a few questions, and a Youth Revolt team member will respond to you quickly. Be a part of something bigger than you. Be a part of Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Get out of here, you idiot. Sorry about that, folks. Jason Veely here, host of the Jason Veely Program. I'm a 22-year-old conservative who is fired up and ticked off at the direction the progressive left have taken this country. Join me every weeknight at 7 o'clock as we promote liberty, advance conservative principle, and work to restore the Constitution of the United States. I can get loud and I can get passionate. How can we afford not to when so much is on the line? Tune in to the Jason Veely Program, live every weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
I was assuming that it meant coverage, but if he says that there's a small group of people who understood what it was, so I'm like, what is it? What is confetti?
It gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
He paid $38 million, looks like $38 million in taxes.
Are you tired of listening to the snowflake liberal media report about ice cream scoops and typos instead of real facts? Well, at the Wise Conservative Show, we promise you that we will not report about Kofifi, but instead about the truth. Instead, about the facts about what's going on in our nation. Join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Wise Conservative Show for your dose of unapologetic conservative talk radio. The Wise Conservative Show, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I'm your host, Connor Wise. Now, this is the last segment of the night, and I actually have something. It's about gun control, and I've talked about gun control in the past, of course, but this is something that I really am glad I get to share with you guys. I actually wanted to share it with you last week, but if you watched last week's episode, you'll know that I kind of ran out of time to cover everything that I wanted to go over. It was just jam-packed with so many stories, and I'm actually cutting off another story this time in order to fit in this. So, sometimes I just get too much for you guys, and I'm not able to talk about it all. But that just means I'll be able to talk about it next week or talk about new stuff next week. But this is something that's I've found kind of hilarious. So what happened was agents tried 72 times to buy firearms illegally online. Well, the results of this are actually going to, they're not going to shock you guys, but they're going to shock gun control advocates. So the U.S. Government Accountability Office recently set out on a quest to illegally purchase firearms on the, quote, surface web. And this was in order to test how existing laws are enforced. Well, during this covert program, they were unable to purchase a single weapon. The GAO, or Government Accountability Office, revealed its methods in a recent report, I guess it's a couple weeks old now, saying, "Our covert testing involving GAO agents attempting to purchase firearms illegally on the surface web were unsuccessful. Specifically, private sellers on surface web gun forums and in classified ads were unwilling to sell a firearm to our agents that self-identified as being prohibited from possessing a firearm. In our 72 attempts to purchase firearms from private sellers on the surface web, 56 dealers refused to complete a transaction once we revealed that either the shipping address was across state lines or that we are prohibited by law from owning firearms. The scenarios we applied to the purchases were derived from provisions in the GCA. The 5 scenarios disclosed status information that would disqualify the agents from purchasing a firearm. For example, in one scenario, they stated that they were a convicted felon. In another, they informed the seller that they had a dishonorable discharge from the military. In those 56 attempts, 29 dealers refused because they would not ship a firearm, and 27 refused after they presented the scenario. Furthermore, in 5 of those attempts, the accounts that they set up on several forums were frozen by the websites, which even prevented them from using them after they disclosed their prohibited status or requested interstate shipment and attempted to make a purchase. Folks, not one person would even try. Even attempted gun purchases on what they're calling the dark web proved more cumbersome than one might expect. Agents attempted 7 times to buy guns on the dark web, but were only successful twice. Agents made 7 attempts. Now, this is actually what the GAO is saying. Agents made 7 attempts to purchase firearms on the dark web. In these attempts, agents did not disclose any information about whether they were prohibited from possessing a firearm. Of these 7 attempts, 2 on a dark web marketplace were successful. Specifically, GAO agents purchased and received an AR-15 rifle and an Uzi that the seller said was modified so that it would fire automatically. GAO provided referral letters to applicable law enforcement agencies for those purchases to inform any ongoing investigations. But even on the dark web, they were only able to get it twice, and that's not without even committing to scenarios like they did before. Folks, gun control isn't actually going to help anymore. What we have in place is helping perfectly. Gun control advocates say that we have so many loopholes that people will just ship guns across state lines that it'll just be so easy to do this. Even the websites themselves in these scenarios completely blocked the account when it said that it wanted to ship it across state lines. The websites itself. Furthermore, none of the sellers wanted to do that. You know why? Because legal gun owners do not want to break the law. Even though the left tries to say that every gun owner is evil. They tried to equate all gun owners to criminals. But folks, that's not true. We all know that that's not true. What we see here is proof that gun owners are responsible and that we don't need more regulations in place. Gun owners still aren't willing to even ship the gun in some cases, let alone ship it across state lines to people who aren't allowed to have firearms. It's not going to happen. They tried 72 times to get this, and it didn't work once. And that's because people are more responsible than the left would like to think. And this is one of the fundamental differences between conservatives and liberals. Conservatives believe that people themselves are responsible and that the government doesn't need to take care of them. But the liberal ideology says that people can't take care of themselves and the government has to do it for them. That's why they want all this government overreach into our lives. But folks, that's not how our nation was created, and that's not how it's going to be in the future. Our nation was created to stay out of the way of our lives. And luckily, we have a president in office that's going to do that. We have someone in office that's going to actually help us with that. And we have people in Congress that are going to do that. Yeah, we have some Jeff Flakes and John McCain's. But we do have true conservatives in the Senate and in the House. So we're safe now compared to the previous administration. Because now we have someone who believes that people can take care of themselves in office. We have people who believe that the government doesn't need to take care of every single citizen. Folks, that's not the government's job. That's an overreach. And gun control is one of those. Excessive gun control is an extreme overreach into our rights and into our daily lives. All right, that's all for today's episode of The Wise Conservative Show. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. You can find me on youthrevolt.org, on Spreaker.com/TheWiseConservative. You can find me on Youth Revolt on Facebook, and you can subscribe to my podcast on TuneIn and on iTunes. I'd like to once again thank you all for tuning in, and as always, God bless.